Hello, everyone. Welcome to the episode 8 of Life, Money, and Globetrotting. I am Hui-chin Chen, co-owner of Pavlov Financial Planning, and here with me is again Jody Harris from World Trade Coaching.
Hi.
Hi, Jody.
Hi.
And today will be the last episode of, I guess, our year-long experiment on talking about life coaching and financial planning together and share our perspective to each other and with other people. So I think today would be a nice sort of wrap-up session to sort of like making a summary of everything that we talked about and what we think is the biggest theme that came out of our conversation this year. So I'll let you start, Jody.
So I took some time to think about all of the different themes that we had addressed over the past year that we've been doing this. And for me, the single concept or theme that tied all of those other smaller ideas together was the importance of paying attention to your own experience personally, to your relationship with others, to your relationship with money, and being observant of how you feel in a given situation, or paying attention to how the choices you make about where you spend your money and what that says about what you do in your life, and paying attention to the choices you make about the places you live and the time you spend with family versus the time you spend at work versus things you do with friends. And I think that one of the things we discovered in our conversations is that when people take time to really pay attention to all of those different things, then they're able to make better choices. And those choices might be different than the choices that other people make, but at least they know they're making them from a place of deep observation.
That's a good... I didn't expect you to say that, but
cool.
I guess then I actually have a quick question for you. So why do you think that it's because paying attention is such a simple thing almost to do, if you tell people that really all you need to do is pay attention, you'll live a much better life, and people think that you're crazy. But why do you think that it is so hard for us, to pay attention, especially as Globetrotters?
Right. Oh, I think that the number one thing is just because we have so much information coming at us. And that's kind of a cliche now, right? Like they say, oh, there's just so much information overload. And I think it's true for anyone. But if you live in one place and you're not moving around, there's a lot of things that you start to take for granted that you don't necessarily have to pay attention to. Like, for example, you pay your utility bill every month, and it's probably about the same. Maybe it's a little bit more when it's really cold or a little bit more when it's really hot. But, those are just, you do it every month and it looks the same, and you have this kind of timeline of how those things look. But if you're moving from place to place, then every little detail becomes so much more significant. But it's almost impossible for us to take in all of the details. It's way, way too much. So we have to learn how to pay attention in a thoughtful and efficient way so that we're not constantly getting hung up on all of those little details. So it's not about, directing all of your attention at every single moment, but it's learning strategies for how and when to pay attention in a way that works for you, and knowing what you can put to the side and what you really need to pay attention to. And I think what that comes down to is that you need to be able to pay attention to what really matters to you and to those that are the most important people in your life, whether it's your spouse or partner or your children or your parents in some cases.
Yeah, so pay attention to the right thing, not everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very, I guess, if you put it that way, it sort of comes back to what I thought I would share, what I thought the overall theme is this year is, I think I'll use a word that you threw out before, that is anchor. And when you think about our lifestyle, a lot of it if you just use the imagery, you may almost think that we're floating or drifting, like from one place to the other.
Right.
But if you think about, like a ship or, or a plant that sort of floats on
Right.
just the sea or lake or water, like eventually there is something that connects it to, the bottom of the ocean or the lake.
Right. Right.
Don't just basically float without control.
Right.
But you stick to the area that you allow yourself to go.
Right.
And I think that's very similar to what you say, like having that anchor and knowing what that anchor is to you, paying attention to the right thing, and it could be your anchor. It could be, the people who are important to you, the values that are important to you,
Right.
the goals for your family.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we talked about all those things. A big thing that we talked about is, how to be flexible, and on the other hand, how to, still create habits so that not everything requires your 100% attention.
Right. Right.
There can still be sort of a realm. You allow yourself to be flexible with, but you are anchored to something important.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think there's actually a lot of overlap in the concept of having an anchor and the idea of paying attention, because both of those things, like you said, really do come back to what's most important to you. And I personally am a really firm believer in, if people are able to realize what their values are, that they never truly stray from what's the most important. So they may be, let's say you have a value of, helping others, just put that out there. And then no matter what information you receive about the idea of helping others, whether it's from personal experience or whether it's from someone telling you to donate to an organization, or whether it's something you read, in the news, that value sticks with you, and you can find the right answer that makes sense for you. And that's true, I think, for broad values like love, and smaller values, or more concrete values like, giving a monthly donation to a charity, or tithing, if you go to church or whatever, that those things answer the questions that you are going to have. And I think it's even more so true for expats, where I think the image, the boat image comes back to me, like your boat kind of gets bumped up against competing values because of different cultures and different organizations and different perspectives.
Yeah, that also reminds me of, I wrote something about even as simple as budgeting. It can be based on your values. Not just, given to charity and things like that, the things you buy. I know a lot of people adhere to, organic eating or fair trade and things like that. That's a value proposition. It may be more expensive. People can come up to you and say, you're not being prudent to your finances, money, and organic doesn't work anyway, but you need to know why, so when people come up to you and say that, you can off and know exactly why you're willing to spend the extra dollars of your budget to do something.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I guess we probably already had talked about this here and there in previous episodes, but I do think for this episode it might be helpful if we can share some, even just like simple exercise to help people, to like figure out what's important, or or focus on what's important. It's like 5-minute exercise per day, that kind of thing.
Oh, I love the idea of doing that, because you'll have some things that are really related to, your financial health, and then I'll have things that are related to, your kind of personal journey or whatever. Do you want to start us off, or?
No, I was just wondering if you have anything.
So I think that it's really helpful for people to find ways to spend time in reflection, whether that means, talking to someone you really trust, who really understands you, a friend or family member, to kind of work through a challenge that you may be facing. I think journaling, for example, or even, kind of quiet time, whether it's going for a run or doing yoga or, walking through the park, but time and reflection, I think, is something that we often cut out of our routines, but is very helpful. No matter how you do that. I mean, and everybody's different. I think another way to spend time reflecting on your values is to once or twice a year do an actual evaluation, of the things that, have your values written. If you do work around your values, have them written out. And once or twice a year, reflect on how you're adhering to your values. And I guess for some people, they don't think about their values. Maybe they don't even really know what they are. In that sense, I think, I really believe like working with a life coach is a really great way to help figure out in a concrete way what your values are. And that's one way in which coaching really differentiates from therapy, because in therapy, you're looking kind of like your own inner kind of process of how you deal with things emotionally. And of course, we touch on that in coaching, but coaching is more about establishing those concrete values and how you make decisions from that place. So those are three things that stand out to me, like reflection, working with a coach, and treating your values as you would any other kind of life task or goal by doing an assessment regularly to see if your choices are aligned with them. What about you?
I like what you say about writing things down. And I think that will be part of my recommendation too, depending on how much time you have per day. But I think it's a great habit to have, not necessarily journaling extensively, but depending on your personality, I think, or how you process things. Some people like to just like write down everything that goes through their mind. But some people, even just by putting down bullet points, why they think they're important, just spend 5 minutes a day or even 3 minutes a day writing things down. It makes so much difference. And I learned about this more now that, I'm an entrepreneur, growing a business plus having, household responsibilities. I noticed that I'm a very introspective person, so I like to think about things a lot. And I feel like when I put things down, it's concrete. So sometimes I don't like writing. Like I don't want to put things down. But the fact that you are forcing yourself to say, okay, I should put something down, it forces you to transfer that thoughts into and by having those things out of your mind, it also helps clear up a lot of space, kind of like RAM, like for a computer, it took a lot of memory for your mind to process other things. Thinking, if you hold your baby and thinking about, oh, I need to feed my baby, but also need to, have this conference call with the other person, and you just like two things, sort of like run to each other. But if you can spend just, a minute or two writing, this is what I talk about on a conference call, and okay, I'll look at it later. Focus on, holding your baby and and it seems like it's much easier.
It's so true. I agree with that one, like 110%. And I think about, my dad is an entrepreneur. He's in his mid-60s now, but one of the most important lessons that he taught me from business, and he worked his way from the guy who hammered the nails to like the vice president of the large national construction company, and then left that to start his own endeavor and built a business from a small place to nationwide. And one of the things that he taught me was exactly that, like, put it down, write it down. And I was even just talking to him a couple days ago, and he said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I said, and actually I have it right here because I always have it with me. I was like, I got my list. And that not even just the list, but the system for your list. So my dad always used a pencil and a yellow legal pad. And now I think he more uses a pen. He used to use a pencil, and it was just set. And I have a specific notebook. I have a specific type of pencil, and I have a structure for how I do that. So, and I'm sure a lot of people who use lists do. Part of the process, you're absolutely right, is that when you transfer that from your thoughts to paper, then you're committing yourself to taking care of that. And I know there are people who say, "Oh, I don't really like lists," or "I don't really use lists," but I actually think that I think all people benefit from having things written down on a list. It's that you have to find the system that works for you. So I don't do a daily list. I do a weekly list. And then I start at the week, I put everything down. And then as I take care of things during the week, I can mark those things off,
Yeah. And one thing we talked about was also, like, I think in one of the previous episodes, is in addition to have a list, like for a week, take another extra minute, pick the most important one and mark a star next to it, and commit yourself to focus on that one first. Instead of pick the easiest thing to deal with. Till the end of the week, like the most important thing still undone.
Right. That means I have to put a star next to this one that will sound familiar to you, which is transferring my IRA to a different I put a star by it right now.
Yeah, or just put it on top or something like that. I do similar things. I will write things down, but then I will start marking arrows, this should be done first, and sort of that sort of also turns into a process.
Right.
Not for me, sort of transferring, what should be done first, second, third, mind into something visual.
Right. You know what really strikes me about this too, and I think something that relates back to just being an expat, is that our lives require a certain level of organization that I think a lot of people don't necessarily have to use in their daily lives. And, that's not true for everyone, right? If you're running a big business and you travel a lot, then perhaps you're using that same level of kind of organization. But the time and energy it takes to do things like, handle visas and passports and plane tickets and figure out the taxes if you're running a business overseas, and, knowing that, in 2 years I'm going to go somewhere else, or in 3 years I'm going to go somewhere else. It requires us to kind of have a sort of mental filing system. And one of the things that I've told clients over the years is that, it's not that everything you pay attention to or notice needs action. But if you think of your brain like a filing system, then you can be like, I'm going to take note of that. I'm going to put it in my mental note card, and I'm going to file that. But even taking the 3 seconds that it takes to just be like, I'm noticing that. I'm noticing that thing that person said, or I'm noticing that, small problem that may exist in the house or whatever. Maybe I don't need to deal with it right now. But filing it means that you've made some sort of mental note of it. And taking the few seconds to visualize, I see that, I'm filing it away, is a way to pay attention to something small that you don't just kind of wander away from.
Yeah, and a good way of, so if you're so up to your capacity that you don't even have time to do that mental note. That's why having a pad and a pen is so helpful. Like if you just have it handy, like in your house, or even use your phone if you can type really quickly, or use your voice activating Siri, whatever. Just like, I thought about this, and it's there. So that whenever you have time to come back and visit.
Right.
Yeah. I feel like I didn't really think about this before, so I grew up. I don't know about you, Jody, but I think even up until some of my college classes, a lot of things that require actually writing with a pen instead
Yeah.
of typing. And
Yeah.
I think writing gives me a better trigger
Mhm.
than, trying to type. And I find that when I type, I don't remember as well. I
That's
write.
interesting.
But
Yeah.
I think because writing also takes longer time,
Yeah.
to put one sentence,
Right.
more time to actually think about. When you have that sentence and to put on paper, it takes maybe 5 seconds versus 1 second on a computer.
Right. Huh, that's interesting because I definitely think that for me, and that's probably a generational thing too, because even when I was in college, you wrote your papers by hand and then typed them up in the computer lab and typed them up. So, but I think that, I mean, at least for my first couple of years, and I think that, like, for me, just this year, I shifted from a handwritten calendar, like I had a paper calendar. And so just in October, actually, I switched to my phone for my calendar. And it was a long time coming. I needed to do it because I had missed a couple of appointments because I hadn't really transferred like my client schedule through my online system, which goes into my phone, but my paper calendar, I put things for the kids in there. And I was like, this is actually not working. It's really causing a problem for me and it's too time consuming. So I decided to do away with the paper calendar and just use my phone. And that's worked really well for appointments, but I could never give up my list for things that like my written list for things that I need to do every day. And if I'm out and I don't have it for some reason, I'll put something in my phone. But actually, usually what I do is I email myself like, oh, don't forget to do this. And then when I get home, I add it to my paper list. And I think I'm with you. It's like writing it out and seeing it. And just, I love the process of marking things off of my list. I find it really satisfying. And I think that and I keep them because then I can look back and be like, oh yeah, I did this week on this day, and here was the outcome of that. So yeah, I mean, and I think there's probably a lot of brain science behind why those things work, and why creating those kind of physical, developing the neural pathways that say it's the kind of the satisfaction from crossing off the list or whatever. The writer Gretchen Rubin does a lot of kind of, I don't know if you've ever read her stuff, but she does a lot of things on like creating healthy habits. And I imagine that's a topic that she covers. I've only read one of her books, but I imagine that's a topic she covers, how the process of writing or whatever affects your ability to follow through with tasks.
Yeah, and I think that's a good sort of, this word came up in my mind of being intentional. I think a lot of the things we talked about, actually from the very beginning, I think that's a good word to summarize.
Wow, it is totally
talked about.
Right. I love that word, actually.
Yeah.
Because I think I do. I just feel like that word is so beautiful because I think that so much of what we do every day is not with intention, right? I mean, like if you go into Starbucks and you order a coffee or whatever, and you do that all the time, you don't do it with intention. But if you were to do it with intention, you might say, wow, that's another $4 that I spent,
Yeah.
And, I'm sure, from a financial perspective, of course, that really adds up. And if you take those small things and do them with intention, realize how much more power you have to, there's so many things that are beyond our control, but you realize how much power you really do have to shape your environment, even when challenges arise.
Yeah, and we can't probably be intentional like every second of our lives. I think that overburn us, but going back to the beginning, finding the things that you're willing to put effort in, and being intentional on those things, the important things and the things that are worth your time, and be intentional on those things and put in the time to write things down.
Right.
Focus on those things.
Yeah, I love that. It makes me think I need to write something about that for my
Yeah, I give you a blog post.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe I'll write about that too.
Yeah. We should link to each other. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so anything else we should talk about today before we wrap up?
No, I think that we've really touched on, I mean, one of the things we had said about our conversations is that they had this kind of natural progression of in this, I think a lot of it has to do with our overlapping kind of, perspectives and which is one of the reasons we wanted to do these talks, but I think that we really did today bring together those ideas of like paying attention and doing things with intention and, creating the anchors that keep us grounded even as we move around. I think those really wrap things up really beautifully.
Yeah, sounds great. So we haven't had a really deep conversation on where to go next, but I think we both agree, we've been keeping this pretty introspective, like how we live a globetrotting life and with our finances and resources. And I feel like going forward, it will be very interesting to start reaching out to looking at how we live this life with other people.
Right.
And making that connection, either for your work, for your life, with your finances, for your career, all those things. I don't have a very clear idea of how it's going to look like yet, and I know Jody will be thinking about this too. But if you have any ideas they want to share with us, we'll be happy to listen to them and maybe incorporate them into our maybe next year or next season of what may not even be on YouTube anymore, but we'll see.
We'll figure it out. It's evolving.
Evolving. So in case you didn't catch us before, we were on Blab, which worked really great until they decided to close. So we're on YouTube Live now. So anyway, it has been a great journey to share with you. And yeah.
Thank you.
I hope I get to do this in the future and maybe to hear a lot more other people's voices as well.
Yes, absolutely. Same for me. Looking forward to seeing what we come up with next.
Sounds great. Okay, so this is it for the year. I hope everybody has a great holiday with your family and the people that you love, and whether it's overseas or in the US.
Okay. All right. Bye.